Thank you for joining this episode of Soul Sessions. Soul Sessions Through the Eyes of Us is a safe space for the panel to discuss various local and global events and provide information on current topics that affect African Americans. Disclaimer: the opinions voiced on this program do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions of the AFCC, its staff, volunteers, board of directors, or underwriters. I'm Anastasia, the program manager.
I'm Marlo, the peer mentor.
And my name is Dalen, and I'm the project coordinator.
Have you ever heard of the term microaggression? Microaggressions are everyday verbal and nonverbal and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target people based solely on their marginalized group membership.
The first step in addressing microaggressions is to recognize when a microaggression has occurred and what message it may be sending. The context of the relationship and situation is critical. We're going to read you a few of the microaggressions that are in the themes.
Alien in one's own land. When Asian Americans, Latino Americans, and others who look different or are named differently from the dominant culture are assumed to be foreign-born. Some examples of this type of microaggression is, where are you from, or where were you born? You speak English very well. What are you? You're so interesting looking. They may be trying to say that your ethnic or racial identity makes you exotic, or that you're not a true American.
There's also the ascription of intelligence, assigning intelligence to a person of color or a woman based on his, her, race, or gender. For example, you are a credit to your race. Wow! How did you become so good in math? Or to an Asian person, you must be good in math. Can you help me solve this problem? Or to a woman of color, I would have never guessed you were a scientist. The message that it sends is that people of color are generally not as intelligent as whites. All Asians are intelligent and good at math and science, and it is unusual for women to have strong mathematical skills.
Colorblindness. Statements that indicate a white person does not want to or need to acknowledge race. When I look at you, I don't see color. There is only one race, the human race. America is a melting pot. I don't believe in race. Denying the experiences of students by questioning the credibility and validity of their stories. The message it sends is denying the significance of a person of color's racial, ethnic experience and history. Denying the individual as a racial, cultural being.
Criminality assumption of criminal status. A person of color is presumed to be dangerous, criminal, or deviant based on his or her race. For example, a white man or woman clutches his or her purse or checks wallet as a black or Latino person approaches. A store owner following a customer of color around the store. Someone crosses to the other side of the street to avoid a person of color. While walking through the halls of the chemistry building, a professor approaches a postdoctoral student of color to ask if he or she is lost, making the assumption that the person is trying to break into one of the labs. The message that this sends is that you are a criminal, you are going to steal, you are poor and you do not belong, or you're dangerous.
And then we have the denial of individual racism, sexism, or heterosexism, which is a statement that's made when bias is denied. And I quote, "I'm not racist, I have several black friends. As a woman, I know what you go through as a racial minority. To a person of color, are you sure you were being followed in the store? I can't believe it." This sends the message that I could never be racist because I have friends of color. Your racial oppression is no different than my gender oppression. I can't be a racist, I'm like you. And lastly, denying the personal experience of individuals who experience bias. And then we have the myth of mediocrity. Statements which assert that race or gender does not play a role in the life successes, for example, in issues like faculty demographics. And I quote, "I believe the most qualified person should get the job. Of course he'll get tenure even though he hasn't published much, he's black. Men and women have equal opportunities for achievement. Gender plays no part in where we hire or who we hire. America is a land of opportunity. Everyone can succeed in this society if they work hard enough. Affirmative action is racist. This sends the message that people of color are given extra unfair benefits because of their race. The playing field is even, so if women cannot make it, the problem is with them, and that people of color are lazy and or incompetent and need to work harder.
Okay, let's talk about microaggressions in the workplace. There are varying categories of workplace microaggressions, and the most common are microassaults, micro-insults, and micro-invalidations. Each type can have a lasting effect on the target's ability to experience belonging or social acceptance in work and at home, which is a fundamental part of reaching their full potential and feeling validated as a valued member of society.
Unfortunately, since the subject is not often talked about in an everyday setting, some aggressors may not even realize they have crossed the line by showing insensitivity or bias to someone's class, race, nationality, religion, age, sexual orientation, gender, or disability.
Here are some common microaggressions that are often overlooked. We have microassaults. A microassault is a type of overt discrimination or criticism that is done intentionally to discredit a marginalized group. This type of microassault includes indirect put-downs, belittling or bullying behavior, such as racial epithets carved into a wall, the posting of historically offensive symbols, such as Confederate flags or swastikas, slurs said to others related to religion or sexuality, such as mocking a group's dress or cultural norms, or other language or actions that signal to the marginalized group that they are inferior and worthy of mistreatment or bias.
Next, we have micro-insults. A micro-insult is a comment that communicates that a demographic group is not respected, but the target is seen as an exception to the stereotype. It is often seen as a compliment in the eyes of the person who said it, but it is actually a direct insult to the person who receives it. The one who is delivering the micro-insult often does not realize they have insulted the target because of their own unconscious bias or prejudice.
For example, if someone reassures you that you are not like the negative stereotype for your marginalized group, this is considered a micro-insult. In another way, exclusion can also be seen as a micro-insult, such as judging a woman as harsh when she speaks with authority, talking over her in meetings, or ignoring her input, despite the same behavior being encouraged when it comes to her male counterparts. Another example of a micro-insult happens in industries where a certain demographic is favored and the minority becomes invisible, such as men who are nurses or women who are pilots.
And then we have micro-invalidations. A micro-invalidation is a comment or action that dismisses the experience of historically disadvantaged group members. It is especially common for members of a group who would like to see the changes or express themselves when it comes to the challenges they have faced as a marginalized member of society, but all too often the target is dismissed, discredited, and even laughed at by those who did not experience the same thing or do not want to draw attention towards themselves and also become a target.
An example of a micro-invalidation is saying, "I don't see color," when in reality the target sees this as very much a part of their personhood or how they identify themselves as a person. With this in mind, it denies the target their racial identity, which should not need to be denied or minimized in any way.
Differences are not wrong, and saying so minimizes the systemic racism that persists even today. Instead, it sounds more like, "You don't see me. My identity makes me invisible. You don't hear me. My thoughts and my opinions don't matter. You don't understand me. My experiences aren't worth knowing." Diversity is about recognizing and appreciating the value of our differences. It is also about understanding that someone's experiences and how they navigate through life is very much shaped by their identity.
If you're the target of workplace microaggressions, then you're likely feeling invalidated as a person, doubting your abilities or questioning whether you belong in the social setting altogether. These are common symptoms that you're a target, and the situation can leave you feeling gaslighted or confused. In fact, microaggressions can become so widespread and so overwhelming that it takes a toll on your mental or physical health, and creates a continuously hostile work environment. When you're the target of microaggressions, it's important not to let the bully win or allow their negative behavior to linger and chip away at your self-esteem.
Take a moment to consider the following steps if you are being targeted. Seeking support from trusted peers and loved ones. Recognizing your own value and potential by not letting anyone else set the standard for who you are as a person. Addressing the situation head on by confronting your aggressor in a professional manner, or going to HR to document the issue and ask for assistance. There are ways to address such behavior that result in breakthroughs in communication that effectively resolve the issue. But since unconscious bias is not always perceived by the perpetrator, even after the fact, it is important to approach conflict resolution in case of microaggressions with caution and care.
It's also important to ensure the intended result of not just stopping the aggression toward the target, but setting a standard for everyone to follow in the future by making it clear what is right or what is the acceptable and appropriate behavior. The risks and challenges of confronting microaggressions. Confronting microaggressions can be a daunting task, especially for those instances that are rooted in unintentional and unconscious bias or prejudice, and the cost of escalation can lead to even bigger misunderstandings. Therefore, it's important to take time to think through the complexities of microaggressions from each party's perspective.
Oftentimes, a microaggression does not outright cross boundaries that will be considered discrimination based off of legal protections, or it cannot so easily be proven given the social context. So it's important to understand the challenges of resolving workplace microaggressions. So let's go into how to address microaggressions at work. If you're experiencing microaggressions in the workplace, here are some ways that you can stop the abuse, such as addressing the situation head on, writing down your thoughts, and soliciting help from a human resources professional.
Address the microaggression. There are some risks involved in addressing a microaggression that may not seem so obvious at first. For instance, if the aggression is being made by multiple people, it's difficult to hold any one person accountable or combat the group. In some instances, there may not be even a person to talk to about the incident for the fear that a manager or group of coworkers will amplify the aggression as a form of retaliation.
Being direct with the perpetrator can sometimes be a good approach if the aggression is minor enough to address head on. It shows the aggressor that you've given them the benefit of the doubt before going over their head to file a complaint, which is an attempt to minimize future conflict between you.
In this case, it shows the aggressor that you went out of your way to validate their personhood by informing them of how their behavior has negatively affected you. It's important to keep things professional by stating facts, such as saying, "I found what you said or did unacceptable, and ask you to please not let it happen again as a friend or a coworker." Let them know that a simple apology and correction of the behavior is all that is needed to resolve the situation.
Alright, so now we're going to have an open discussion about what we just went over. And our first question is, have any of us experienced microaggressions? And what were they? And I will go first. I experience microaggressions all the time, especially when I get my hair done. It's always like, oh my god, your hair grew overnight. Like, is that like a micro insult?
Oof. That's
I
a
don't
good
know.
question.
I've heard that one, but
Because I get that one a lot.
Your hair grew overnight.
Like,
That's-
did your hair grow overnight? Or
Is that fake hair?
yeah, or can I touch your hair?
I think that would be a micro-invalidation.
Micro-invalidation.
Because that's the common action that dismisses the experience of historically disadvantaged group. So maybe not. Maybe.
it's definitely some sort of microaggression, though,
Mhm.
because why are they assuming that, like, my hair couldn't grow overnight?
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, as a black woman, I feel like they always assume that, like, we can't have long hair and stuff,
Mhm.
and that's a big issue. And I know a lot of women have experienced microaggressions like that. Like, a lot of people, always ask me, like, if that was my real hair, even if I just had, like, my natural hair or, like,
Mhm.
like straightened,
Mhm.
because it was a little bit, like, a little long, and, like, people just would assume that it's fake.
Yeah.
So
I've definitely experienced microaggressions before having been in the military. I think that one of the most common microaggressions that you may see in the military is like the way that somebody lets you know that they understand what you're saying, you know? So there's a way that you could say like roger that, you know, and then there's also like you could just say like tracking, which just gives a little bit of a different tone. I'm not sure if it's just because of my size, but I don't get microaggressions too much. But I feel like they might come in the form of like people hinting on maybe like different things that they would like me to change. So it'd just be like, oh, I did this because I figured that you wouldn't, or I did this because I figured that you forgot, or let me remind you before the time is necessary, and that comes off as microaggression to me.
One that really bothers me is like when I open up to people about my anxiety, and they're just kind of like, oh, but you seem so social, like you seem fine. Like I just feel like it's invalidating like the fact that people with, you know, mental issues can be normal people. Like
Yeah,
like I don't know, I hate that. That's one thing I got a lot in high school because I was really social, and in college too. But yeah, it was just really frustrating to go through that. And then another thing was like, you're so articulate. Like, okay,
yeah.
yes I am. Would you expect me not to be? Like, so that's definitely something that I got a lot. Or just like, you don't sound like, or you don't talk like you're black, or like you don't sound like you're black. And I'm like, what'd that mean though?
Yeah. People call me white girl, and it bothers me because it's like you're gonna like take my identity away because I'm speaking properly and associated with the race that I have nothing to do with. Like I'm not white just because I speak with intelligence. Like sorry. Next question. Where do you hear them mostly?
I'd say probably at work and at institutions, usually like at school. Sometimes like when I'm meeting new people, that'll happen more frequently. I don't know, like I've had people like, where are you from, or something like that, and it's like, California.
Right.
like I don't know, just when I'm meeting new people and stuff.
I get it.
Yeah.
I'd say work in the grocery store.
It's always the grocery store, right?
It's the grocery store. Definitely. Or like new jobs, they'll be like, well, how do you say your name? And I'll tell them how to say my name. And they'll be like, well, can I call you something shorter? And it's just like, no, it's my name. You know, like, just say my whole name.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. How frequently and how much a variety of situations y'all deal with when it comes to microaggressions, because I just don't see it as much. I would definitely say in the workplace, and then curveball in like relationships, microaggressions are huge. Like,
But no, definitely.
microaggressions also are, I feel like, as a curveball, prevalent in relationships too, because like, you know, if you learn somebody, there's sometimes things you may not feel comfortable saying at first, so it comes out in the form of a microaggression. And so yeah, I would say work and relationships for my answers.
Dope.
But how do y'all address them though?
Well, I've never like, I haven't experienced one recently, so like now that I've learned a lot more about microaggressions and like how they really do affect like everything, then I would definitely like be more adamant about being like, but why are you like, why do you think that way, or like, can you elaborate on that? But like when it's happened in the past, like I haven't really addressed it. I've kind of just been like, that was an interesting comment, but kind of kept it to myself. Mm-hmm. And I wish like I could go back and be like, but why?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. I've addressed some, mostly with just knowledge. I remember being at Walmart and I had like silver and black braids, and this lady walked up to me and she's like, "Oh my God, is it wool? What is that?" And I was just like, "No, it's yucky." I informed her on what kind of hair, like long hair. She's like, "Oh, I didn't know." Like, and it just goes to show, like, even when people think they're genuinely being kind-hearted, they just don't know. They genuinely don't know that they're insulting you sometimes. And it's just that unconscious bias that we have animal hair in our hair, or, just ignorance. It's just literally lack of knowledge. But like you were saying, I sometimes didn't know, like I don't see color.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know where that fit in this category, but now I know that it's a micro-invalidation. So now when I hear I don't see color, I know how to address that situation with that's not helpful to my identity, with you not seeing who I am as a person.
I also want to add one thing. I think it's like really important to promote like empathy, and to be like, how would you feel if someone said that to your kid? Or like, how would you feel if somebody, just make them like think about it more, put them in your shoes, and let them know that it's a stereotype. Like you said, some people just literally don't know. Like, just straight up tell them, like, I think that may be a stereotype. But I mean, it happens. Like, maybe even if you've like used microaggressions before, be like, I've said that in the past, but now I know, I've learned that this is not okay.
Correct your behavior.
I am much more confrontational when it comes to situations like this. Maybe even than the normal person, because I'm big on psychology and how the brain works, so I'm kind of gonna try to like mess with the person a little bit just to try to like understand where they're coming from. So like, for example, sometimes if I hear a microaggression, like I'll ask them to repeat it to see if they'll repeat it the same way that they said it the first time. And usually if somebody like has to repeat something, they kind of think about it again. And it's interesting to see some people's reaction when it's like, "I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?" Or like, "Hey, yeah, I could you repeat that?" Like, it makes them think about it one more time. And so it's interesting, like, watching that thought process for me. So it's more of like an observation kind of thing. Or I also feel like a good way to, the ways that I've handled it in the past is like, I might ask somebody if they're okay after they do that. So it's like, did you, so it's like if I get a microaggression and it's something that kind of throws me off, or it's like, I'm not sure what they really meant by that. Like asking like, "Hey, are you okay?" could like genuinely be like a non-hostile way of asking if that person meant it in such a derogatory way, or if that person meant to say it like how they said it. So yeah, that's my little confrontational way of how I deal with how I address them. So it's a lot of different.
I like that though. I'm gonna start doing that.
You should.
I'm definitely start doing that. I'm really fleshing out.
That's a good way to separate like intent from impact, and I think that's really important.
Seriously.
Ooh, that was good. Before this discussion, have you ever heard of micro insults, micro invalidations, or micro assaults? Answer: no. Had I experienced them? Yes. We'll just clump those together.
Same. I definitely knew like about microaggressions, but I didn't know they had all these like separate categories of them. But that's really interesting because it's able to like, because they all are so different and complex that it's easier to like, separate like how to handle it in a way. So yeah, I haven't heard of those before, but it's interesting. Good to know.
I ain't never heard of a micro insult invalidation or assault. I definitely understand how it's a real thing though, but no, that's definitely new information for me too, for sure.
How do you think microaggressions affect people of color?
Monumentally, okay? Monumentally. I guess I'll just go first here. So we have we have a show that we do here called History Right Now, and it happens every Wednesday on the radio. And this past Wednesday, I spoke about how microaggressions and how different types of discrimination can affect black couples. And it's fascinating once you start paying attention to the amount of microaggressions or times of discrimination. Like once you start paying attention to how frequent it is, you start to understand why there is such a need for mental health places in these kind of communities, because like honestly it does have an effect on you so long. It can create a barrier or some kind of wall of defense between you and different people who you're not used to associating with. Because like for example, coming out to California, there's a lot of different ways that people could tell you that you're not from out here, you know? And that'll kind of, and being from the East Coast where it's like, I'm not really used to that kind of treatment or some of the microaggressions that I got out here at first, just being a big black dude with dreads, like from the East Coast. It made me have a wall even, you know? It's like, I would rather not deal with this, so I'd rather just not talk in public. That's my thought. I feel like it has a very huge effect. I'm not gonna go on no tangent or nothing, but you know, when you add up how frequent it is, and when you add up like the different reactions that people will have to it, whether that be problems of self-esteem or problems with how confident they walk in public or social interactions, like there's a lot of different ways that it affects people of color. I feel like heavy.
I just feel like it doesn't celebrate our differences. It like picks and points at them and is like, oh, you're different? Okay, let's talk about that in a like derogatory way, instead of like uplifting that. And that's just something that like as black people like we really need. I don't really want to give a whole explanation because that was really good, so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I think they just affect us our whole lives, just from, like you were saying, like our self-esteem, like, and our confidence. Like it definitely is just something like that affects us our whole lives, and we carry it with us in certain situations and relationships that we try to build, and you don't really realize until you sit down and think about it. But like, yeah, it affects a lot of us, from like people assuming we don't all have dads, from assuming people don't have, you know, citizenship status, or just anything along those lines. Like it just is something that we've experienced since we were little, and we still experience them today. And it's just, we need to do better at addressing it as people of color.
And then the last question we have here is, do you think that microaggressions affect people of color differently than other marginalized groups?
I think that it has a stronger negative effect on us just because of the racism we go through every day and how much stress that already puts on us. On top of that, to hear like these little comments and digs at who we are is just, it's a bigger stressor than it would be for, you know, somebody else. But what do you guys think?
I think it definitely does. In my high school, I think, world history class, our teacher used to say, imagine being a black lesbian Republican or something like that.
Whoa.
Like, you just got it bad. Like,
Seriously.
you know, so like, imagine being a person of color and you're in multiple different marginalized groups. You know, you fit in the LGBTQ, you fit in the age category, you fit in the gender category. Like, now you're just one big fat target for micro everything.
I also agree that it would affect people of color differently, maybe because of the frequency within how much we get it, and just how it's just like that on such a mass scale. Like everywhere you go, it's like something that you may have to deal with. However, I'm starting to think that some of these other I'm starting to think that other races may be starting to get a taste of what we were going through when you talk about like how some white women are being referred to as Karens. Ooh, it's just, ooh, they hate it. They hate it. Oh, they hate it. And if you start to look at some of the videos that are on like YouTube or Facebook about how some of these women are actually processing being called a Karen or being referred to as such, or some of the women who really named Karen out here who just hate what people doing what they name, oh, it's crazy. So all that to say, it's fascinating to me that you give another culture a taste of what we're going through, and then you see what their reactions are, and it's like, okay, take a snapshot of that reaction and multiply that by the 400 freaking years that we were doing what we were doing, or multiply that by like this happened to us since we got to America, and y'all been being called Karens for about 2 years now, maybe. So like, it's, I feel like that's even a testament to how big of an effect it can have on people, because this just started, but like all of the other microaggressions that we get, you know, have been happening for a long time. So,
and then to piggyback off what Dalen said, microaggressions are usually referred to as death by 1,000 cuts. And it's just, you know, every day those little tips and pokes at you. And then like what you're saying about the Karen thing, it's like we call them Karen because they're literally displaying themselves giving daily microaggressions in public settings. Like, they're getting called Karen. They're being microaggressed for microaggressing.
Word.
Crazy.
It's a fascinating movement.
Yeah. Crazy.
Fascinating movement.
Yeah. But I think we are good on that discussion. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and we'll answer them in the next episode. Other than that, we're going to move on.
And we're back with the lead updates. My name is Dalen Whitaker, again the project coordinator here at the African American Family and Cultural Center. And just to let you know, LEAD stands for Leadership, Equity, Action, and Development. We believe passionately in creating and providing and protecting a tobacco-free environment for all Butte and Yuba County residents and in communities of color. Really quick, our three main objectives are resisting targeted price promotions, which is explained by this. The tobacco industry spends billions of dollars annually on targeted advertising. Low-priced products and coupons contribute to high smoking rates among people of color and in low-income communities and make it easier for youth to become addicted. Number two, developing upstream approaches to tobacco control. By including tobacco control in general plans and other municipal codes, we protect communities from exposure to tobacco products and help to prevent poor health later in life. We believe limiting exposure to tobacco is an environmental justice issue. And then for three, growing community advocates. We support and empower youth and young adults to fight back against the tobacco industry's targeting of marginalized people. Okay? And then we have some myths and realities that we want to go over really quick. Not going to take up too much of your time. We want to keep it short and sweet, you know what I'm saying? So these are myths and realities about vapes, okay? So if you're a teenager, I'm sure that you've experienced or come in contact with, been peer pressured, or seen some kind of advertisement about vaping. Here are some truths and some lies for y'all, okay? So here's one myth. Vapes produce a harmless water vapor. The reality is, vapes produce an aerosol that has nicotine and toxins known to cause cancer. These toxic chemicals include things like benzene, lead, nickel, and some of the same chemicals found in tobacco products. The chemical diacetyl, found in many vape flavors, is linked to serious lung disease. Here's another myth. Vapes are safe. Vapes are not a risk-free product. That's the true reality. They contain nicotine and low levels of toxins and chemicals. Vapes are especially dangerous for teens whose brains are still developing. Teens who vape are at risk of nicotine addiction, mood disorders, difficulty of paying attention, reduced impulse control, and learning problems. The third myth is that vapes are not addictive. And the reality is that nicotine is a highly addictive drug. Nicotine is one of man's ingredients and is in most vape e-liquids. The fourth myth, vapes can help people quit smoking tobacco. And the reality is, vapes are not approved by the FDA to help people quit tobacco. Some people switch from cigarettes to vapes, but switching isn't quitting. In fact, vape use among youth and young adults is strongly linked to the use of other tobacco products such as traditional cigarettes, cigars, and smokeless tobacco. Last but not least, the big tobacco doesn't make vape products. The reality is, all major tobacco companies now make vapes. By 2020, the vape market is expected to reach $15 billion. Okay, and it's 2022, so you know right now we at a cool little 43 billion.
Wow.
43.
Wow.
Okay. Honestly, personal opinion, and the last thing that I'll touch on for the LEAD program is that a lot of times, like this said, vaping is used as a cessation tool, or it's advertised as a cessation tool, which is something that makes it easier for you to quit cigarettes. The problem is the frequency within how much people vape. So you have people who smoke cigarettes who may smoke like 4 to 5 cigarettes a day, and once you have somebody who's vaping, which is more frequently allowed indoors and more commonly accepted in very, very long vaping settings, you're actually getting more nicotine at that point, vaping all day, versus the 4 or 5 cigarettes that you would have gotten before. So these are just as dangerous because of the frequency in which you're smoking each one of them. And honestly, it's just better not to smoke at all. I think we're moving next into our program section.
And we would like to remind you that the opinions voiced on this program do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions of the AAFC, its staff, volunteers, board of directors, or underwriters. And we're going to move on to our events portion.
The African American Family and Cultural Center presents We Got Your Back school supplies giveaway. We will be giving out free backpacks, pencils, pens, notepads, and much more. Supplies are limited, and there will also be a COVID-19 vaccine clinic available. RSVP to reserve your backpack and supplies by calling the AAFCC at 530-532-1205. You are required to RSVP with the center to receive school supplies.
The AFCC will be hosting a COVID-19 vaccine clinic on August 9th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. here at the center, located at 3300 Spencer Avenue in South Oroville. Vaccines are available for ages 6 months plus. There will be a first, second, and booster shots of the Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer.
The AFCC Community Garden is offering a free gardening 101 workshop from seed to harvest to the community. This event will be Saturday, August 13th from 8 to 12 p.m. at the Garden, located at 2733 Wyandotte Avenue, South Oroville. There will be items such as zucchinis, tomatoes, peppers, and more. For more information, you can call the center at 530-532-1205.
You know what you can do with that? You know you can make zucchini noodles.
Yes.
Turn the tomatoes into some doggone puree on top of the zucchini noodles. Throw some peppers in there.
And we also grow basil. You put some basil on
And we got
top.
eggplant.
Come on, man.
Come on.
Who don't like
That's
eggplants?
an Italian feast. Right
Soul
now.
Sessions Through the Eyes of Us airs every Tuesday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
A behavioral health counselor is in the center every third Tuesday of the month from 1 to 5 p.m., offering drop-in services and referrals.
Personal Peace Institute, a free program via Zoom that provides participants with the skills and strategies necessary for recognizing and controlling their angry feelings. The Zoom meetings are every Wednesday. The youth group is from 5 to 6, and the adult group is from 6 to 7.
Dance Diverse is our hip-hop and step dance class that allows participants to build relationships, learn leadership skills, and boost confidence. Everyone age 7 is up is welcome to join. There is a beginner and an advanced group. The class is every Friday from 2:30 to 5 p.m.
Make sure you are tuned into our community radio station, KOYO 107.1 FM.
Yo, community radio.
And you can stream online at KOYO.FM as well. And check out our live radio show, History Right Now. Sponsored by the Lead Project.
Woo!
Every Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Woo!
with Dalen Whitaker, the
Woo!
project coordinator.
Woo!
And please give us a call at 530-532-1205 if you are interested in signing up to participate, volunteer, or facilitate any programs or events. Have a great day.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.
Peace.